Have you ever had the feeling that someone wanted to put their hands on what's yours? That distrust that begins as a nuisance and suddenly becomes a certainty? So it is. I didn't want to believe either, until I realized that my own cousin was keeping an eye on my husband. And worse, she recorded everything. At first, I thought it was my paranoia. But what if I told you that she not only wanted to steal my man, but already had a naughty plan for that? And I only realized when it was too late. My name is Carla. I'm 40 years old, a solid wedding, and a life that I thought was perfect. My husband, Marcos, has always been that kind that makes his wife turn his neck on the street. But I never had reason to suspect, at least until it arrives. My cousin, Giovana, younger, body full of curves, look maliciously. She moved home next door, and from the first day, I felt that she wasn't there just to be a family. What looked like an innocent visit became an obsession. And the worst? I just found out why she had the boldness of leaving a camera hidden in my room. Now I'll tell you everything. But before, answer me in the comments. Have you been through something like this? What would you do if you found that anyone was trying to steal your love? Because what I did? Well, it may not have been the right one. In the beginning, I treated Giovana as a family. I gave affection. I made sure to make her comfortable. But do you know when the instinct screams? She looked too much to Marcos. It was not that look of admiration. It was a look of those who already imagined on him. At first, I tried to ignore. But when a woman is hunting, you can feel. The first track came in the compliments. Wow, Carla, how lucky you were. Marcos is quite a man, right? I always found him different. Her voice had a huge tone. As one who knows every word, I laughed blandly. But then came the second track. One night, while I was in the kitchen, I heard giggles. That laugh of those who are having too much. I arrived slowly, and there she was there. Played on the couch, cross legs, red lipstick on the lips. Do you think this color suits me, Marcos? She asked, biting the corner of her mouth. He smiled, without giving much ball. Answered any yes, but it was enough to boil me. She looked at me, that smile of corner. How do you say, did you like the show, cousin? It was at this moment that I realized this was not my head. She wanted to play, but the game she started was about to get much more dangerous than she imagined. After that, seen on the couch, I knew Giovana was not just kidding. She wanted to test boundaries. And if there's one thing I know, it's that when a woman decides to hunt, she doesn't even get what she wants. I noticed how it was always around. In breakfast, there she was, leaning against the porch like who wants? Nothing. If I went to work, it came out of nowhere, just as Marcos was alone in the backyard. Coincidence? I doubt. One day I arrived early at home and found both in the garden. She laughed loudly, threw her hair back, put her hand on his arm, all in the biggest wooden face. And he? He looked too comfortable. Later I went to take satisfaction. I asked if he didn't realize her way. He laughed. He said I was exaggerating. The doubt started to run me. Was I seeing things? Was it just my paranoia? But then came the fuse. I woke up at dawn with a shiver on the skin. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water, but when I passed the window, I saw her. There. Stop. In the dark. Looking straight into my house, I felt a cold in my pimple. What the hell was she doing there at that time? And that's where I knew. That wasn't just jealousy. Giovana didn't just want to test boundaries. She had a plan, and I was about to find out how far she was going to get what she wanted. After that night, my vision changed. She was not just an inconvenient cousin. She was playing a dirty game, and I needed to know how far it was. I started to look more closely. And, the signs jumped in my face. She bumped into Marcos every time he got out of the bath. He made a point of praising his scent, pulled conversation just to smell the closer. But it was a detail that left me without ground. One day, as I tidied up the room, I smelled a strong smell of sweet perfume. It wasn't mine. And on the couch, there was an intimate play played. It wasn't mine. My heart fired. Marcos was in the bath. So whose was that? I took the piece and went straight to the guest room. My intuition already knew the answer. I opened the door, and there she was, lying down, crossed legs, smile in the corner of the mouth. Are you uncomfortable with me here? This woman's boldness. I tried to keep calm and raise the piece. Is this yours? She got up slowly, took the piece from my hand and laughed lightly. Did you think it was someone else? The way she said, as if she was having fun with it. That's where I knew. She wanted to see how far I endured, but if she thought I was going to fall into her game, it was very mistaken. That piece thrown on the couch was just the beginning, because what came later was much, much worse. I started to feel that there was something wrong inside my own home. Things changed places. Doors that I was sure of having closed appeared ajar, and it was only when I started to pay close attention to the corners of the house I realized she was already much closer than I imagined. In the room, near the bookshelf, something caught my attention. A discreet, almost imperceptible shine, but enough to make me freeze. I approached with a rapid heart, and when I saw what it was, my breath crashed. A hidden camera. I held that small device with trembling hands. Who had put it there? What had they already recorded? I looked around, feeling a tightness in my chest. How did I not realize it before? Was there more cameras scattered around the house? I knew Marcos would never do that. There was only one person capable of something like that: Giovana. With the camera in my pocket, I went straight to the guest room. I opened the door without hesitation, and there she was, lying on the bed, relaxed, with that cynical smile that took me seriously. She already knew I had found, and did not try to deny. On the contrary, it seemed, satisfied, as if waiting for that moment. More naturally, he said he had already recorded a lot of interesting things inside the house, and that was enough for a click for everything to come below. My stomach rolled. What had she ever registered? Did there be more cameras? With his cell phone in his hand, Giovana slid her fingers over. The screen, as who plays with someone's fate, showed a video. Marcos, alone in the room, stirring on his cell phone. Nothing seemed compromising, but her voice, full of poison, made it sound like something much worse. He implied that he had wanted her before, that just needed one opportunity. The anger burned inside me, but I knew that's exactly what she wanted. Take me out of the axis, make me lose control. But the worst was not the provocation, it was the doubt. If she was able to install cameras in my house, what would be more able? And Marcos, did he hide me something? I tried to ward off these thoughts, but the seed was already planted. Giovana realized. He smiled, pleased. I knew I had hit me, and I wasn't going to stop there. The next day she went further. When I went down to breakfast, there she was in the kitchen, short bathrobe, loose hair, the cup of coffee in hand as if already part of the house. Upon seeing me, he smiled naturally. No sign of guilt. Marcos came in shortly thereafter, and at that moment, she made a point of being present. He leaned over the counter, the strong perfume spread in the air. The way she moved, as if she knew exactly what she was doing, gave me a knot in her throat. She was no longer trying to hide her intentions. Now the game was clear, and I needed to decide what to do before it was too late. In the following days, it was impossible to ignore. Giovana made a point of infiltrating the right times. If I was busy, there she was, offering to help Marcos. If he sat on the couch, she appeared out of nowhere, pulling the subject, laughing loudly, throwing charm without a shred of shame. And that was not all. The clothes were shortening, the curves more on display, the touches bolder, small slips on the shoulder, long laughs, compliments that seemed to have a second intention. She knew what she was doing. And I started to wonder if he knew too. Until one night, Marcos went to take a shower and left the cell phone in the living room. The screen lit with a notification. It was hers. "Are you alone?" My blood boiled. That message sounded too intimate, as if there was already a game happening. Was he responding? Did you already have something rolling between them? I needed to act before it was late. That message was the drop of water. I waited Marcos to get out of the shower and went straight to the point. I asked in his face about the message, about what was really happening between him and Giovana. He frowned, picked up his cell phone and looked at the screen. He said he had no idea what she wanted and never answered anything. But by this time, my patience had already been exhausted. I grabbed the camera I found in my room and threw it on his hand. The shock on Marcos's face was instantaneous. He turned, that small device between his fingers, trying to absorb what he was seeing. It was the first time I really saw anger in his eyes. Without hesitation, he marched to Giovana's room and opened the door without knocking. She was there, thrown into bed, flipping through a magazine as if nothing had happened. Marcos threw the camera over the bed and demanded explanations. And Giovana smiled, as if still in control, and then he launched the bomb. He said he lied to me, that at that party he almost kissed her. My chest squeezed. And the worst, he didn't deny it on time. Marcos's silence was like a punch in the stomach. I expected him to laugh in her face, to say it was absurd, to defend themselves immediately. But he stayed there, stopped. The doubt hit me hard. What if she were right? What if he had liked all that attention? Giovana noticed my hesitation and smiled. She knew she had managed to make me doubt. He got up from the bed, crossed his arms, and released, as if he had already won. I don't need to prove anything. You already understood everything alone. My head spun. The memories came like a movie. The way she approached him, the looks, the compliments loaded with intention. What if he never really pushed her away? I felt Mark's look at me, waiting for a reaction. But the truth? At that moment, I no longer knew what to believe. It was then that I did something I didn't even expect. I took the camera and played hard against the wall. The noise of the breaking plastic filled the room. The pieces spread across the floor, but the feeling of relief was instantaneous. My patience was over. I looked at Giovana, firm. She was no longer manipulating me. But that woman? It didn't make it easy. She laughed. He said he had everything saved on his cell phone. But this time, I did not hesitate. I took a step ahead and pulled the cell phone out of her hand. I squeezed firmly. I approached without blinking, and with a firm voice I let go. If you try to destroy my marriage, I end up with you first. The game turned. For the first time, she didn't smile. Marcos looked at me, shocked. Giovana too. But now, I was in control. After that night, nothing more was the same. Giovana left. But the trail she left did not disappear. My wedding, which once seemed solid, was now full of invisible cracks. Marcos tried to convince me. He said there was never anything between them, that everything was a dirty game of my cousin. But the truth? The seed of doubt had already been planted. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to move on. But every time she closed her eyes, her voice echoed in my head. He has wished me before. Was it true? Did Marcos think of her? What if I hadn't discovered in time? Would something have happened? The pain of uncertainty was worse than any betrayal. Over time, we tried to rebuild, but something inside me had changed. The confidence? It was never the same again. Giovana taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes the danger does not come from outside, come from within, of the people we trust the most. And you? What would you do in my place? How far would you go to protect your marriage? Responds in the comments. I need to know. Did I make the right decision?